When you think of World War II, you think of the most devastating war in human history, right? It just completely reshaped our world. But something that massive doesn't just happen out of nowhere. We're going to unpack the chain reaction, event by event, that led the entire planet into war.
You see, it wasn't one single thing. It's not like a switch was flipped. It was more like a series of dominoes, each one tipping over the next, and picking up speed until the whole thing came crashing down. We're going to follow that chain, domino by domino.
So, where do we even begin? Well, believe it or not, our story doesn't start in 1939. It actually starts 20 years earlier, in 1919. It begins with a peace treaty that was supposed to end all wars, but instead, it planted the seeds for the deadliest one yet.
Inside that treaty was something called the War Guilt Clause. Now, just imagine this for a second. You're forced to sign a document that says an entire world war was completely 100% your country's fault. This was so much more than just words on paper. It was a national humiliation that created this deep, simmering anger all across Germany.
And of course, that guilt came with a hefty price tag, $33 billion in reparations. To put that in perspective, that's like $270 billion today. It was a crushing debt. In fact, and this is wild, Germany only made its final payment for World War I in 2010, a debt that lasted for almost a century. The economic fallout was just insane. The government tried to print more money to pay its debts, and that led to what's called hyperinflation. To really wrap your head around how extreme it got, look at this. In 1922, a loaf of bread in Berlin cost 16 marks. Just 1 year later, that same loaf of bread cost 200 billion marks. Your life savings could become worthless overnight.
So you've got this perfect storm, right? People are out of work, their money is useless, and their national pride is in the gutter. This kind of chaos is the perfect breeding ground for extremism. When people feel that desperate, they start looking for a savior, and Germany found one in a guy named Adolf Hitler.
And this is where Hitler comes in. He was an absolute master at tapping into that desperation. He gave people simple answers and, more importantly, someone to blame. He told them, your problems aren't your fault. They're the fault of Jews and socialists. It was a powerful, dangerous message that took hold, and by 1933, he'd ridden that wave of anger all the way to becoming dictator of Germany. But it wasn't just about getting Germany back on its feet. Hitler had this core belief, this ideology he called Lebensraum, which basically means living space. He truly believed that the so-called superior German people needed more land, more resources to thrive, and that land would have to be taken, by force, from their neighbors. Okay, so Hitler's in power, and he immediately starts breaking all the rules of the Treaty of Versailles, rearming Germany like crazy. And the world? Well, for the most part, the world just watched, and its inaction would only convince Hitler he could get away with even more. This quote, man, it just captures the whole feeling of the era perfectly. That's the British Prime Minister, Neville Chamberlain, right after he signed an agreement giving a huge chunk of Czechoslovakia to Hitler. He genuinely believed he had bought peace for our time. This whole strategy was called appeasement, basically giving the bully what he wants and hoping he'll leave you alone. But of course, appeasement didn't work. It just made Hitler bolder. Look at this timeline. In March 1938, he just walks in and takes over Austria. 6 months later, they give him a piece of Czechoslovakia to keep him happy. And what does he do? 6 months after that, he breaks his promise and takes the rest of the country. Every step he took without being stopped just proved to him he could take another.
But not everyone was buying it. Winston Churchill saw right through this. His words about that agreement, they were absolutely chilling, and they were a prophecy. By trying to avoid war at all costs, they had only guaranteed it would happen.
And this was the final domino. On September 1st, 1939, German forces stormed into Poland. This was it. This was the one act of aggression that the world just could not ignore any longer. The policy of appeasement was officially dead. So Britain and France drew a line in the sand. They gave Hitler an ultimatum: get out of Poland or it's war. And Hitler, who'd been getting his way for years, just ignored them. So they kept their promise. Britain and France declared war on Germany, and World War II had officially begun. Okay, so war is declared. But this wasn't going to be the slow,